Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. Governor Kelly Ayotte just delivered her State of the State address to the legislature, discussing achievements of her first year in office and her outlook on 2026. This is also an election year, but at the moment, the governor does not have a major opponent. So we are in unique and interesting territory here, and we get to navigate it this morning with the governor herself. Governor Ayotte, thanks for joining us on Close Up.
Good morning, Adam. It's great to be here.
So let's start with the story that a lot of people have been talking about this last week, this proposed ICE facility in Merrimack, and a shocker as the American Civil Liberties Union uncovers this application with a relatively obscure state division of historical resources for what's called 106 compliance. For those who don't know, this is just sort of like a check-the-box historical and preservational thing where to make sure you can continue to build on a property. The commissioner that oversees the division director both came before you and the executive council this last week and said they missed this and they didn't know that it was with them until they kind of found out late in the process. A mishap, according to them. But you want the Attorney General to look into this. Explain why.
Well, I do, because I think it was unacceptable that we did not receive that information and that it wasn't communicated with Merrimack also. I've been in touch with the town of Merrimack. My team has as well. And we've been in touch with the White House, Department of Homeland Security, because I want transparency for Merrimack, for the people of Merrimack, so that they can weigh in on whether this facility comes and what the impact is on their community. So I thought I need to understand what are the circumstances. Why wasn't this information raised? There's also, as the counselor pointed out at the meeting, there's a comment portion that I think Merrimack would have liked to weigh in on. So that's why I'm asking the Attorney General, let's find out what happened here so it doesn't happen again. And most importantly, I think Merrimack needs transparency.
Democrats are on the attack here saying you must have known about this somehow.
Well, I think the commissioner came forward and said, number one, she didn't know, she claims, and then also that I didn't know, so I don't know what they're talking about.
Had you been looped in on January 26th when the division director says he became aware of the 91A request from the ACO for the information, would you have allowed the immediate release of that information to proceed? How would you have handled that? Oh,
we would have reached out to Merrimack right away. I think that would have been important because we want to let them know any information that we have. So there's also a comment portion on that if they wanted to weigh in as a obviously representing that community. So we would have been very transparent with it.
You know, the system, the online system where DHS filed this, clearly it was created to try and ease the process, right? For people who are building and developing to make sure they can do this quickly and affordably. You know, if I'm building a housing development in Dover now and it's in a historic or preservation district, how is this not going to slow down the process if the division director has to kind of, check for, political implications?
Well, Adam, this is kind of common sense. We're talking about a federal facility that had wide public discussion, right? We're not talking about building a house in this neighborhood in Dover. So I just think we got to use our common sense here. This should have clearly risen. And the fact that the commissioner didn't know, come on, the leader of that organization and then not the governor's office and the community, we all work in government. Let's just use our common sense and our brains here. When we have something like this come in, that has such implications, let's make sure the community knows. Let's make sure the governor knows, the council, the legislators.
Back to the proposed facility itself. Is this, in your opinion, an appropriate location to house 500 to 1,000 immigrant detainees?
Well, I haven't studied the location, but what's most important here, Adam, is what does the local community think? The elected officials there, what are the impacts for the town of Merrimack? There's obviously going to be additional public safety resources when you have a facility like that. Does it make sense? That's why there needs to be more transparency here. That's why Merrimack needs to weigh in, because they know their community best. I believe in the local voice on this.
You know, it's very interesting to see on that application, I don't know if you noted this, that the DHS wrote, this is called the ICE Boston Detainee or ICE Boston Processing Center. You ran on Don't Mass Up New Hampshire.
That's right.
And now the Trump administration wants to take illegal immigrants from Boston and Massachusetts and bring them to Merrimack. Well, it doesn't seem like you could possibly mass something up any more than this. So why not oppose it?
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, let me just tell you, we don't even know what it is yet. I mean, in terms of what they're going to do, I would just ask, and I said this the other day, I don't think the administration is handling this properly, that they should let people know, let people weigh in. Let's have an open discussion about this. Let's make sure Merrimack knows what's happening. So I'd like to see them bring forth all the information about what their plans are there.
And you're right that they haven't specifically said that this will be a detainee facility, but this is what
Right.
they're doing in a lot of other places in the country. You know, I do want to ask you about, you have
Well, I'm focused on New Hampshire and say, when they're working with New Hampshire, please give us the information.
Right, but your former Senate colleague, Roger Wicker, in Mississippi, hard to imagine a state more red than that. He just came out in opposition to a very similar
Right.
detainee facility in his state, saying, you turn this warehouse into a prison, it's going to take economic development away from us, economic opportunity away from us, you're going to strain human resources and infrastructure,
It's
you're
a
going to
really
put public
good point.
safety at risk.
I think it's a very good point.
Mississippi is standing up to the Trump administration on
Yeah.
this. Why not New Hampshire?
I'm standing up to the Trump administration because I've been asking for information, and I've been saying very clearly that the local community has to have a say in this. And I know that there's deep concern within Merrimack, and I certainly support that local voice. So I will make sure that it's clear that the people of Merrimack have to decide here. And, you know, they need to know what's happening here, if it's happening, what the implications are, and they should have a say, and I would say the final say here.
Why not redirect and say, hey, Trump administration, what about maxing out FCI Berlin? Or you could potentially put pressure on your fellow Republicans who serve at the county commissioner level and say, hey, you know, let's put immigrant detainees
It's not
in the
my
jails.
job to find these facilities. That's the Trump administration.
Well, but
That's
Merrimack
their
doesn't
work.
want it, though, right? The town has said we don't want it
Well,
there.
I understand that, and we don't even know if it's happening, but I will tell you that at a minimum, they deserve to have the information, and they should decide whether it comes in their community. But in terms of where these other detainees go, that's for the Department of Homeland Security at the federal level. But local communities have to have a voice here, and they have to be involved. And you should be forthcoming with the information. Full transparency.
You know, it's clear you're a law and order Republican. When people talk about that, they sometimes forget about the second half of that, the order part, that is both the public and how the law is enforced, right?
That's
a big
right.
part of order. You've served as a prosecutor, you've served as Attorney General. In your professional opinion, do you think ICE took too aggressive an approach in Minnesota?
You know, again, I certainly, as having been an attorney general, looked at these things. What I hope happens there is a complete and thorough investigation. We can all look at, you know, videos, things that happen, but I know, having handled these types of cases myself, in other words, where there's officer involved in the use of lethal force, there has to be a thorough and complete investigation, and that is what my hope is that happens there.
It appears we are seeing a recalibration, at least for now, from the administration in terms of following a more orderly and traditional process within the law. You know, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution protects all of us against unreasonable government search and seizure. Excuse me. Do the self-signed administrative warrants that ICE is using, in your opinion, do those allow agents here in New Hampshire to forcibly enter someone's home to make an arrest?
Well, Adam, listen, I think that obviously we have an attorney general that can look at the legality of any kind of situation like that. But here's what's happening in New Hampshire. Why we don't have something like what's happening in Minnesota is that we have cooperation at every level of law enforcement. In other words, federal discussing with state and local, focused on public safety and making sure we keep criminals off our streets, and also making sure that officers are safe themselves because they're working together and communicating together.
It's clear it's not happening like that here at the moment, but, you know...
It's not going to happen like that here.
So, you know, a lot of voters are upset.
Communication and how we do things here in New Hampshire.
Nonetheless, a lot of people are upset about how this is going, and we're seeing, again, the recalibration of the Trump administration. I'm just interested, you know, when you're facing those independent voters later this year and they want to know, hey, can you give us an instance in which you've really vocally stood up to the Trump administration on something? What are you going to point to?
Let me tell you this. What I'm going to say to those independent voters, New Hampshire is the safest state in the nation. You know, also, we're obviously #1 in a number of other areas, but the safest state in the nation, because I am focused on public safety. We have great law enforcement at every level here. They work together really well. We have a wonderful quality of life. And every day I stand up for the people of New Hampshire. There have been many times, of course, I've disagreed with the administration, whether it was on the tariffs with Canada, various funding issues where, you know, suddenly we've seen funding stripped on critical areas. So I stand up for New Hampshire every day. That's what I do. And I'll work with them when they're doing things that are good for New Hampshire, like we received the Rural Health Transformation Grant, the most amount of money in New England. And we were glad to receive it. It's going to help us transform rural health in our North Country, telehealth. providers, hopefully getting scholarships for people that want to work in the North Country to stay in healthcare, it's going to be very positive. So there are instances where, of course, I'm standing up, and then there's instances where I'm advocating for New Hampshire like that.
Two more questions from the national level, and we'll pivot back to some fun state issues. Now, President Trump is suing the IRS for $10 billion. He can direct the DOJ to settle this lawsuit, and he just said in his Super Bowl interview with NBC that indeed he wants to give this money to charity. So it sounds like he's very serious about doing this. Would that be an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I haven't followed his or anyone else's lawsuits. The only thing that I focus on is what's the impact on New Hampshire and what's happening here, so I'm not even familiar with that.
So if he takes this money, you're just not going to have an opinion on it?
Well, I don't even know what it is, Adam. I mean, there's
he's
lots of
suing the
things
IRS
happening.
for $10 billion.
I mean, obviously there's people suing people every day, including the president. I don't follow the lawsuits. What I care about is what's happening in the state of New Hampshire. And, he'll make his decisions, what he wants to do on a lawsuit. It's great if he wants to give it to charity, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you what I do every day. And that is, I want to know what's the impact on the state of New Hampshire. If that impacts New Hampshire, I'll have an opinion.
Okay, I've got one with New Hampshire impact for you. The Trump administration, the president, is also calling to nationalize elections. Do you want to see a federal takeover of the voting systems in New Hampshire?
Absolutely not. I did not support a national election when President Obama was in office. I do not support nationalizing election with President Trump in office. We do elections right here in New Hampshire. We do it at the local level, working with our Secretary of State, who does an excellent job in providing guidance to our local election officials. And that's why we have the first in the nation primary. We do it well. And I have confidence in our elections. Okay, lots of local issues and state issues we want to get to. When we get back to more with the governor, we'll hear her thoughts on key bills moving forward at the State House. Stay with us.